Hi, Alex. Thanks for meeting with me today.
Oh, of course, anytime.
I wanted to get started by getting to know you and your background a little better. I think that'll just help me kind of understand what direction we want to go from here and what's going to be most helpful to you. Would you mind starting by telling me a little bit about any religious or spiritual beliefs or practices that are current for you?
Well, currently I identify as agnostic,
Mhm.
meaning that I believe that there's no specific right or wrong way to believe about or to have beliefs about God or spirituality. There's no real way that we can know what is true. So I don't necessarily believe or disbelieve in anything, but I do have my own spiritual practices.
Okay, that's great. Can you tell me a little bit about your spiritual practices?
Yeah, of course. So typically, I do not go to church or attend any sort of structured religious program. Um, Mostly, what I do is on occasion, do meditate and consume psychedelic drugs, and also do so socially for spiritual purposes. And then I also I mean, it's not necessarily a common spiritual practice, but I also have conversations with what I believe to be the universe trying to guide me, and also with people that might have passed away.
I think that's great, and it's interesting that you brought up psychedelics. I've recently been reading a lot about the use of psychedelics in counseling and therapy, and there have been a lot of positive results from that. So I think that's great. And then also, it's definitely hard to sometimes deal with feelings with the loss of a loved one, but if you're able to sort of have those conversations, I can see that being a great comfort. Can you tell me a little bit about the background of your spiritual practices and kind of how you came into this as your spirituality?
Yeah, of course. So initially, through my upbringing, I was raised as Catholic, uh, and went to just like a local Catholic church in Midvale, Utah, called St. Teresa's. It was an interesting time. I actually got kicked out of Sunday school a few times for just being a little too demanding in my questions and the way I posed them, and also not following dress code rules one time. But as far as that goes, that's kind of like my background. I did spend some time in my elementary and middle school years learning about Buddhism, um, but ultimately kind of landed on being agnostic. There were so many things that were meaningful and to or follow or pursue. Just so I kind of decided to develop my own spirituality, and I'm personally on this journey to reclaim my indigeneity and um, kind of feel closer to my roots and uh, specifically with psychedelics and like psilocybin mushrooms, uh, have been in use since like 7,000. There's documented use as early as like 7,000 BC, by Spanish conquistadors in Central and South Americas, saying that there are several different tribes that use psychedelics to better understand themselves and better understand their connection with the world. There's several studies also showing that there's an increase in connectedness to nature, in self-reporting interviews of people who have consumed psychedelics. And I think that my goal in pursuing spirituality and my goal in um, maintaining these practices is to better understand myself and better understand my connection to the world. And that After learning a little bit about that and also knowing people who use psychedelics for spiritual and or recreational use, I thought it might be an interesting way to kind of develop my connection to my spirituality in the world. So I started that. I think my first experience with psychedelics for spiritual uses was around the time I was 18, and I'm 29 now. So I've been yeah, spirit, like using that in my spiritual practice for about 11 years now.
That's great. And do you find that that has contributed to a source of strength within you?
Well, I mean, I do believe that I have gained a lot of resiliency through my um, experiences with psychedelics. I feel that something that they do for me is they're able to reframe issues and problems that I'm having in the everyday world, whether it being connecting to another person, connecting to a passion or a hobby, or um, something that requires a little bit more discipline. It changes the way that I think surrounding the issues that I'm having, and allows me to open up and look at things from a different perspective. Um, which allows me to engage a lot more effectively. And like, I'm not the kind of person that has had severely spiritual, like not spiritual, but severely, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I've never seen God or felt God necessarily while on my psychedelic journeys, but I do have this sense of like connectedness, and it's almost like the energy that is exchanged between beings and other life forms, like even just plants or animals or just an environment, right? It becomes so much more apparent and so much more tangible. And so when you come out of that, these hurdles or these problems seem a lot more manageable. So I don't know that they've given me like strength in the form of invincibility or uh, some sort of like detachment. I think that they have increased my engagement and increased my resiliency. So not necessarily numbing the impact of difficult events, but allowing me to re-examine and essentially like take the blow and be able to recover more quickly.
Okay, great. Yeah, I love that connectedness that you're talking about, and I believe in that kind of universe energy as well. Um, we've talked a little bit about this in past conversations, but could you tell me a little more about being raised Catholic and your transition to becoming agnostic, your kind of new spiritual outlook and what that looks like with your family and even how that ties in with your sexuality?
Yeah, of course. So I mean, I identify as queer, and both sexually and in my identity. Um, some would consider me closer to like pansexual or non-binary, I guess. Though that's not the way that I identify. Though within structured religion, oh, and I guess I did leave this out as well, is that I did have a small stint in a evangelical church in my teen years.
Interesting.
Yeah, went on a mission and everything. That was interesting. I'll have to show you all about it. But yeah, I know growing up Catholic, there was not a lot of understanding when the subject of like queer people or the LGBTQ community came around, and that was one of the reasons why I was kicked out of Sunday school, is because they were having a conversation on sexuality that I didn't agree with, even at a young age. Probably just subconsciously knowing that I was queer and had those feelings, maybe asked a little too many questions, and I did feel some coldness from the Catholic Church there. But also like I saw a lot of hypocrisy even at a young age, I felt like there was a lot of talk about like helping other people and kindness, and even amongst church members, there wasn't a ton of that um, support or kindness that I was hearing about, and yeah, that was very impactful at a young age. And just to see that there was a lot of judgment of people's what I considered like little mistakes. Um, and Yeah, so around the time I was 12, so my parents got divorced, I believe, between the time I was 10 and 11, their divorce was finalized. And around the time I was 12, my mom allowed me to stop going to church. And that was a very liberating experience. Not only did I grow up having ADHD and really struggled to hold still in the pews during service, like it just wasn't a place that I felt a lot of security or freedom. And so my mom allowed me to stop going to church, and I started exploring Buddhism, and just trying to figure out a little bit more about a practice or a lifestyle that I found to be very beautiful or peaceful. Um, and though, like most Buddhists would argue, or some Buddhists would argue at least, maybe not most, that Buddhism is a lifestyle practice, and you can practice it within other religions as well.
Right.
Um, I found the beauty of it being that it was so like the practices could be so universal. Though around the time I was 12, I had started drinking and um, uh, participating in like other recreational activities. So I felt like a bad Buddhist and felt like I couldn't practice because one of the principles of Buddhism is abstaining from drugs and alcohol. And so I left that practice out of respect for it. Though I feel like I embody a lot of those practices in my everyday through like meditation and trying to instill those values in the way that I like interact with others, and trying to be more selfless, and trying to develop um, like a sense of community so that something lives on when I pass on, you know.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, and I love that. That makes a lot of sense. One more question and then I'll let you go. And again, thank you for your time. You said that your mom allowed you to stop going to church around age 12. Can you tell me a little more about the like cultural background of your mom and your grandparents who I know you're close with, and just their acceptance of you in this process?
Yeah, so I think that when it comes to my mom's background, or both my parents' backgrounds, they were both raised heavily Catholic. And and I feel like there was an understanding for my wanting to leave the church because I think that my my mother started seeing similar types of hypocrisy in the church as well. She was a teen mother. She had met my father at church, and subsequently got pregnant at 15, and just faced a lot of criticism from the church, and was maybe not as accepted as she had been prior. Whereas my father faced like very little rejection, and kind of was able to do his own thing, even though he wasn't a devout follower, someone who went to church regularly. He still seemed to, amongst church people, get a little less criticism. And so I think that
Right.
that kind of contributed to my mother wanting to leave the church. She had stopped going to church about the time that they separated. Um, and it was a few years of a rough divorce before the divorce was finalized, and then a year after that, where my mom essentially told me I didn't have to go if I didn't want to. So I think that that was a factor. I also think that with my grandparents being like on both sides having been more Catholic than not in the early years of my life, it contributed to them being very like harsh and strict parents. Um,
And sorry to interrupt you, but just to clarify, are your grandparents are both from Mexico?
yes, all four of my grandparents are from Mexico.
And do you think that Spanish element, along with the Catholicism, maybe had to do with some of that resistance as well?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no, definitely. It like there are strong aspects of just like Mexican culture that are very like homophobic or like maybe misogynist or patriarchal. Um, there's like the whole thing like your group of ladies and one man comes into the room and it changes the whole language of the way that you're spoken about. So I think that that has a lot of impact as well. But yeah, when it comes to like the spirituality, I think that it's not necessarily like a complete loss of faith, but a strong like pushback when it came to like the reliance that they had on their faith as years went on and they were exposed to different kinds of people here in the United States as opposed to their small town. I think that also like having their kids come out as like queer, having mental illness, or their grandkids at least, for my grandparents, like had a huge impact on the way that they have like come to grow and love and accept me now. I think that that love and caring was always there. I think it was just shrouded by their religious experience and what they thought was appropriate and not. And I think that that impacted the way that they treated my mother as well.
Well, I love success stories like that, obviously, and we can talk more about this in our next session, but a lot of challenges, it sounds like, that came throughout that time period, but it sounds like you're in a good place now. How do you feel today?
Oh yeah, no, I feel great. I feel I mean, especially on like my site, like my spirituality has contributed to a lot of other journeys. Like right now I'm on like a physical health journey. I've been on my mental health journey for um about 7 or 8 years now. And yeah, my spirituality was like a huge pushing off point to try and make those changes in my life. And I think that yeah, I think through my exploration and my regular practices, I've come to not I mean not always be like a happy go lucky person, but to be a well balanced person and someone that has like values and goals and like a reason for living.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, you sound great, and I'm glad that it sounds like you've really found a level of like inner peace and self-acceptance, and you're on your journey. It just acceptance of kind of where you're at. Sounds like you have good support and that you've given this a lot of thought. And like you said, you're on your journey. So, well, thanks. That's all the time I'll keep you for today, but this gives a lot of insight as to, I think, when it comes to mental health, um, figuring out kind of what things you value and what types of strategies are going to resonate most with you. So, anyway, I'm really happy that you came to talk to me, and we'll talk again next time.
Yeah, of course. You have a great day.
Thank you.